We have another point. We said the Lost in Tribes went to Western Europe, went to areas in Western Europe, and we know name the countries. We name the countries that the Lost in Tribes are to be found in. And some of these countries, the Lost in Tribes are a majority of the population. In others, they are not necessarily a majority, but they are very important, very significant. So countries that we find the Lost in Tribes to be found in include starting from the north, Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, also the Netherlands, also Ireland, Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, the British Isles, Scotland, England, Wales. As we said, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, and they are areas that Lost in Tribes settled in, where they gave expression to their Hebrew origins to some degree or other. And this is where we find them. And we also noted that in each of these areas, on the whole, a specific tribe was predominant. Each of these areas was dominated by one of the Israelite tribes, with overlaps here and there, but on the whole, in general. And these names are to be found amongst peoples who are historically important in the said nations in general. So, as we have it listed here, we have the names of Gad. Gad was one of the tribes of Israel. Gad, the tribe of Gad. The name Gad can be pronounced as Goth in Hebrew. Goth is another way of pronouncing the name Gad. The Goths were people who were historically important, who were to be found in Sweden and other areas of Scandinavia, and an offshoot of theirs gave rise to the Gothic peoples who ruled over portions of the Roman Empire at a later date. And Goth is another way of pronouncing that in Hebrew, the name Gad, and the Goths themselves referred to themselves as Gad or as God. Our pronunciation is a recent development or an alternate development. So Gad was a name for the Goths and for peoples in Sweden. The Goths were also known as Gudus, and we have elements from the Goths. We had the Getai, who were a Gothic group in the Balkans and Scandinavia. And the Guti was a name for the Goths both in Scandinavia and east of the Caspian Sea, where the Goths were also important. We had the Guthons, Goths on the Baltic coast, the Gutai in Scandinavia. We had Gadrosia in Iran, where the Goths were at one stage were prominent. We had the Pasa Godai, meaning sons of God, a nation in Iran. And so on. We had the Gadeni in Scotland, the Gadhel, a nation Scotland and Ireland, the Gedingers, an Anglo-Saxon group. Also, we had clans of Gad, the sons of Gad. We also find the names of the sons of the tribes of Siphion, gave rise to the Fefali, who were a Gothic group who settled in France. We have the Hagi, who gave rise to the Chauci, the Corki, the Franks. They were also known as Hugi and Hocking. They became a portion of the Franks who settled in France, in West Germany, and in the Netherlands. Also, the Engling in Sweden, the Corki in Ireland. They were the Hagi. And we had the Huguenots of France, who were named after a legendary Hugo, who may be identified as Hagi of Gad. Huguenots were a religious group, but they were important. They settled. They also had ethnic attributes, ethnic characteristics. They lived together, intermarried with each other, created their own little civilization, and they became important. They were important in the establishment of South Africa, and also in other areas the Huguenots had importance of their own. And they are named after Hugo or Hagi, one of the sons of Gad. People said the Shuni, a son of Gad, Sunni, and we find them in the Suwani in Sweden. Sweden was dominated by Gad. With Esbon, another son of Gad, who gave rise to the Bastonai, a Gothic group who moved to France. The Hastings, a Vandal group who moved to England and Scotland. And Osni, another son of Gad, who may be responsible for the area of Osnabrück in the Frankish area of Germany. But area also pronounceable as Geri gave rise to the Grani of Sweden, the Griotingi amongst the Goths. And we had Arodi, one of the sons of Gad. Arodi gave rise to the Harudi in Norway. Also the Hedgross in Scandinavia. We had Areli, another son of God. Areli. And they gave rise to the Eroli. Eroli were associated with the Goths, and they were found in Sweden. And we had Guni, another son of God, who was important amongst the Chuni and the Guni of Naphtali, and Egan of Denmark, and the Gugarini of Holland. So there we have it. That is the names of Gad. We find these areas spread over areas populated by the Lost End tribes, but concentrated to some degree in Sweden. We identify Sweden with the tribe of Gad. The name Gad in Hebrew means good fortune or a group of soldiers. It can have both meanings. And Gad was characterized by a group, and in Sweden even now the group is important in Swedish culture. They don't like, according to a description of the Swedes by themselves, they all say they don't like people taking charge. They like to sit around and talk things over and let decisions emerge from group meetings. And this is an attribute of Gad. Gedud Gududenu in Hebrew. Gad will be a group of people. And also, so too, we had the tribe of Naphtali. The tribe of Naphtali in Genesis 46:24 says, the sons of Naphtali, Yasriel and Guni and Jesa and Shilem. A point worth noting was brought to our attention first by Johan Swenson, is the river that since the end of World War II that marks the border between Norway and Russia, right in the north. Norway is bordered by Russia, and the border between them is a river. And this river in Swedish, in Norwegian or whatever, is called known as Grans Jakobs Elves. Oh, something like that. But its meaning in English is the border of Jacob. A river of the border of Jacob is the border of Norway in the north. And we had the Naphthalite Huns who were named after Naphtali, and some of them settled in Scandinavia. And we had the clans of Naphtali. We had Yasriel, Zeeland in Holland, Zeeland in Denmark, Israel in Scandinavia. We had the Guni of Norway, Egan, the Gugarini of Holland, the Shuni. The Huns of Scandinavia also had Jeza was another son of Naphtali, and Yaza Alans gave rise to the Alans, and who settled amongst the Lost End tribes, and the Varese, who were from Denmark. They migrated to Britain. And we had Shilem, another son of Naphtali, gave rise to the Silingay, Silingay, one amongst the Vandals, amongst the Dutch in Holland and in Scandinavia. Another son of Israel was Dan. And these are the sons of Dan. The sons of Dan, Yehushim had one son, according to the Bible, Genesis 46:23. Yehushim, also known as Shucham. See Numbers 26:42. These are the sons of Dan after the families of Shucham, the family of the Shuchami. And Dan, we find that name Dan in numerous places. It was one of the characteristics of Dan, that he would leave his name wherever he goes. And he was referred to as like a snake by the wayside. So a snake, when you go in Israel, when you go along different pathways, dusty pathways, you sometimes see the snake, evidence that the snake had been there, because it leaves his trace in the dust. And the tribe of Dan left their name in numerous areas of their pasture. We have the Don River, the Danister River, Danapa River, Danube. Also, we had the Danuna, and historically were one of the sea peoples that were of Israelite descent. And they moved with the Jutes to Denmark from Cilicia, southeast Turkey. We have the Dangali, who moved in Iran, who moved to Scythia. The Danava, another Scythian tribe. We have the Dana, who were in Lebanon, and also in Ireland, Tuatha De Danann. And the people of Don in Wales, the Danonis in southwest Britain, which is also known as Danonia. And you have the Danes of Denmark. The Danish had a tradition that they were descended from the tribes of Dan, and the Danes of Denmark were associated with the Jutes, who migrated to Britain, but they came from Jutland in Denmark, and Danish tradition. There's a book of history of Holstein saying that the Danish are descended from Dan and the Jutes from Judah. Also Shucham was another name for the son of Dan, also known as Hushim Shucham. And his name is to be found in the Suan in Sweden, in the Suami in Finland, who are also associated with Simeon, and Hushim, Hesse in Franks in Germany. Then we had the tribe of Judah, the Jews. The righteousness of Judah is to be acknowledged